Hey you guys, it's MJ from All to Love. How are you? Today I want to talk to you about what is spiritual awakening. And well, you actually get to decide that. You get to decide what spiritual awakening is to you. Some of you guys know my story, and I talk about how I experienced a series of spontaneous spiritual awakenings when I was 19 years old. I could feel it coming around sort of 17, 18. I could feel some subtle shifts happening, partly due to the fact that I had experienced mushrooms for the first time when I was 18 years old. And, as I retrospect and look back, I can see that as a natural psychedelic, that those experiences definitely shifted my perspective. And to me, that's ultimately what a spiritual awakening is. A spiritual awakening is simply a shift in perspective. And in a very simple way, you could say that the majority of us are born into a world that perceives the world as separate from us. So it perceives the lakes and the trees and the creatures of this planet, and indeed cultures and other people, as a separate form, so that the external world has nothing to do with me. I'm just like this piece of meat and flesh, mindlessly kind of wandering around this planet for a short period of time, and then I die, and then that's it. And, in a systematic training, we're actually more sort of systematically, and it has to do with our own soul's disempowerment. Okay, so a lot of that, it's never a blame and attack thing when I talk about the system and how we're programmed, because on an unconscious level, the way I look at it, it's like part of the agreement, the you could say the privilege of experiencing universal energy through a body and through form is such a privilege that it comes with certain contractual obligations. And some of those soul contracts, you could say, have to do with clearing density and uplifting the whole, even though it might not look that way. We experience our density with pain and what some people call karmic relationships, which are just the relationships which help to reflect back to us our density, our darkness. And again, it's not like a personal thing, but it's more about the agreements we made to come into form and ultimately what we're here to do, what we're here for. And all of us have a sort of specific calling. We have nudgings from within that are kind of telling us part of that gift or that purpose. And in a really, really basic way, I remember, having those conversations with people and talking about the service that we're providing to one another. And then this guy who's a very talented healer and kind of life coach and stuff, he was like, yeah, but really your only responsibility is yourself. Really your only gift to the world is your own awakening. And so that has really inspired me to just kind of carry on and accept the evolution of my own awakening as the gift that I share with the world. So it's not about being a high-flying coach. It's not about being some kind of YouTube celebrity. It's literally just living exactly how I desire to live, and then having faith in how that shines an example. And this is definitely part of it. This is definitely a platform that inspires me and that makes me want to be active and engaged with the world every day. Otherwise, it's, I'm pretty quiet, reclusive, go to bed early, do my yoga practice, I work at retreats, and all of it has been guided. That's the juice about, so when you have a spiritual awakening and you don't resist it and you just follow through with the inner nudgings along your path, and you basically let yourself express the desires that you're desiring, then your life unfolds in really miraculous ways, and you can I would say bypass some suffering or some icky situations just by continually elevating yourself to really believe in your highest dreams and your highest manifestations, basically, and realize as well that there is a co-creative force at will. There is you are the totality, right? So that which you desire to express or desire to manifest, the totality wants you to manifest that too. And the more we can detach from our egoic projection. So recognize that an egoic projection is always coming from unworthiness. It's always coming from a place of lack, because the world, in essence, kind of the cultural paradigm predominantly around the world is unworthiness and lack, because we're all human slaves to a system of control and domination. So until we wake up to like, wait a minute, why am I fucking acting like a slave? Or why am I letting you treat me like that? Or why am I da 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 da? And then you start asking those questions and it totally spins out. And again, what I talk about in the Fearless Life Guide is owning and transforming your emotional densities. Shame, guilt, fear, jealousy, betrayal, all those emotions that come up are coming up for healing, coming up for release. And whether or not it's personal to you, or whether or not you're, I guess, what people like to call the light workers or whatever, if you're one of those people, then you have the power to actually transform a huge amount of the collective pain body, which is things like resentment and jealousy and fear and, you know, fear of persecution and fear of rejection and abandonment and all that stuff is really coming up thick and fast. The more we awaken as a collective, the more we're seeing these threads coming up for healing and being purged. And this last 2.5-year cycle with Saturn and Sagittarius has really been a transformational phase. So like everything's been like shape-shifting around, which, you know, as a human being, when you're taught the world is like this and then suddenly it just goes, it's really fucking weird, you know? And so spiritual awakening is weird and life is weird, but that's kind of the beauty. And that's where you get to, where, you know, on the other side of doing all this inner spiritual work or whatever, which is really just meditating, getting to know who you are and trying to be nice to yourself and be nice to other people. And then you start to edge over to the other side and you kind of look back and you're like, oh wow, the world is so beautiful. These beings are so magnificent. Life is so effortless and abundant and full of opportunity. And it's almost like you forget. That's kind of how I feel into this idea of like rebirth, which is why I do feel reborn, is that now it's like every once in a while people remind me like what it's like for them. And I'm like, oh, weird. That's not my experience. Like I mostly only have these kind of conversations. And every once in a while people remember me, like people still watch the news like every day, and people still, you know, buy into this agenda of like, yeah, but you need to know what goes on in the world. Yeah, but you are the world. So in truth, the only thing you need to get to know is self. Self then perpetuates and extends the creation of your desired heart vibration, which is like the reason you came to the planet. So moving from be who the world wants you to be who you want to be, that's the transition. Spiritual awakening just means that some kind of experience has shifted your perspective to make you realize that you are one with your reality, not separate from it. That's the simplest way to kind of look at it. It's inevitable and it's also undeniable. That's the word I was looking for. When you have these kinds of awakenings, it's absolutely undeniable because literally your whole world looks different. Once you've had a perspective shift, you're like, people look different, the world looks different. Once you go through the atonement process, which is owning and transforming as many of your emotional densities on a certain frequency, once you transform enough of those, you like pop out and you're ending up like integrated in a much more kind of alive and awesome way, which just makes you feel good. And then like the whole world opens up and you realize there's been these people vibrating, living in this kind of beautiful planet and pioneering the path for them, you know, and so you're the one who's going to pioneer the path for you. But the spiritual awakening is not something like you force, and it's not like a big deal. You know, it's not like people who have undergone spiritual awakening are super special. We're all beings of light, ultimately. Even like beings who choose to live in a certain frequency. People might call them the grays or like the reptilians. Like you might get into some of those wormholes as well. That's still divine. It's still divine light field consciousness. It's just light that's vibrating on a certain frequency. So the perception is still more dualistic, right? And so the more you integrate, the more holistic you become, and the more you can actually like shine light for all the spectrums, you know, all the spectrums and colors of the rainbow. I hope that was useful to you guys. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for new subscribers. I really appreciate you guys like mega big time making career transitions. I want to talk to you guys a lot more about this as well, this last 2.5-year cycle, making career changes, and basically just totally committing to the YouTube the vlogger lifestyle, and like showing up in this way for you guys. So if you want any one-to-one sessions, get in touch. I'll put the description stuff below. And happy awakening and happy new year and all that kind of juice, because it's happening now. Well, I believe, Sally Pan, if that's your name, I believe that the awakening is kind of ongoing, but I had my first initiations when I was about 18, 19. So that was like 16 years ago. And really the whole awakening process has been over these last 16 years. And it's only in the last 2 years where I can literally feel, energetically speaking, having like either risen or just embodied or integrated enough to really feel that there's like a level of recognition or realization or actualization within the awakening that you hit. And that's what's undeniable when you're sort of coming into yourself, into a greater divine union and balance within self. The whole game changes, you could say. So, and I'm somebody who's like, I don't think you can put a timeline. So I think once you have those initial perspective shifts and initial initiations, that your timeline is just unique to you and how you're desiring to live and how you're desiring to like integrate. So, you know, I've witnessed people have droplets of things, suffering patterns that usually start to click things in. And then once they make the choice to make the transition, that like a full-on awakening can happen within 3 months or 6 months. People could literally transition from like, I am a slave to a system to I'm an empowered divine creator within a few months. But I'm here to say that like it can also take 16 years. It can also take like a while when you're not really sure what the fuck you're doing. The beauty of the times that we're living in now is that there's so many of us. There's so many teachers who have gone through this shift and these spontaneous awakenings and then had to work it out from within self. So as like normal people having done this like inner transformational work, it's really useful because it offers more guidance for more beings, which is obviously necessary because there's more beings on the planet now. So I hope that was useful to you. Thank you so much for your question. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I look forward to speaking to you guys really soon. Lots of love. Bye-bye.